Brother Chavis' fault. It wasn't anybody. It was Crowdcast. And they decided to have technical difficulties between 6 and 8 o'clock. So that's what happened there. But we're glad that you're with us tonight. And we are very excited tonight to have the opportunity to interview one of the leading worship leaders in our apostolic movement. And been enjoying a few moments of chatting here before gone live tonight. And you guys are in for a treat. So, there's a Give Now button on your screen, and this is going to help us continue your revival. I want to thank Pastor Tuttle for the vision that he's had for this. It's been phenomenal. Like I said last night, just get into be every night in our home at 7 o'clock, know that we can log on and get a fresh word from the Lord, hear some great music from some awesome worship leaders, and just spend time together as a church family. And so there's that Give Now button. If you'll press that, it'll send you to our church website where it'll walk you through on ways to give. Also, there's an Ask a Question button. It's down underneath the screen. And once we get rolling with the interview, you something comes up and you go, hey, I want to ask Brother Chavis a question. You can click on that, comment there your question. And once we wrap up at the end, we'll open it up for a few moments to our online viewers and let you guys ask him some questions. So without further ado, we are going to invite Brother Chavis on here. And again, it's a great honor to have him here with your revival. And he's going to come on here. Hopefully this all works out for us tonight. There he is. Awesome.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. How are you doing?
We're so glad to have you. Thanks for coming on tonight. And this is your third time to appear on your revival, and we can hear you and see you this time. So that's great.
Here I am.
Yes. So I know I asked you this before, and I'm sure, please tell me you've gotten this question about your name. So, I'm bilingual, so I see the Chavez, and I want to pronounce it. Like Spanish, Chaves.
Yeah.
And you said it's Chavis, Cortt Chavis. So that's so interesting to me. It may not be interesting to anybody else. Do you ever get your name mixed up?
Absolutely. A lot of people do that. It's when people see me, and it's no fault of theirs. It's just the way it is. I guess it's just society, but they automatically think that I'm Hispanic. And and my name is spelled Chavis. And so,
okay.
Yeah, and so when people see it, they automatically think, "Oh yeah, here's a guy, Chaves, obviously, and he's obviously Hispanic." A lot of people just start speaking Spanish to me automatically, and I'm like, "No comprende, no entiendo," and I don't know. So I'm trying to, I'm trying to learn some Spanish, but I'm actually Native American. I'm from the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, and I just look Hispanic, but I'm not. I'm actually First Nations. Right here from the Lumbee tribe. So, yep. And it's pronounced Chavis. That's how it's pronounced.
Yes.
But sure. I'm never offended. I promise you.
Awesome. That is so cool. Okay, so I'm going to say your name right, and then make sure I get this right. So tell us about your family. I know you're married and you have 3 children. So
yes.
Tell us a little bit about them.
So I'm married to a beautiful woman. Her name is Amanda. Me and Amanda grew up kind of in the same area. We have one of my second cousins married her uncle when we were both kids, and we kind of met through that. And then of course our churches were close by, and camps and stuff. And so we had a young dating life, and we've been married now going on 20 years. This year will be 20 years. Hopefully we'll be out of quarantine and be able to do something for our 20-year anniversary.
You can, right. Yeah. Go on a cruise or something, right?
Something. I don't know if we'll do that. It may be a while for that, but we shall see. But and I have 3 kids. Courtney, which is my daughter. She's my firstborn. Courtney, she's 16. Okay. And in a few months she'll be 17. And Sydney is 13, and in a few months she'll be 14. And then there's Isaac, my little man, and he's 8. And then just a couple months in May, the beginning of May, he'll be He'll be 9, of course.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, so
So now
I have a beautiful family.
is your family musically talented?
My wife is our music director here at Truth Chapel, my church.
Okay.
And she is an unbelievable musician and a great leader, and she does a great job. My oldest daughter, Courtney, is an amazing, phenomenal worship leader, and that's what I've done my whole life is lead worship. So,
Hmm.
coming from me, you can take that to the bank. She is. I'm not. It's not just because I'm biased. She is
Yeah.
really a legit worship leader. And then my baby girl, Sydney, she has in the last few years just decided she wants to play drums, and she's really good. Matter of fact, the other night when we were going to do worship and we're having an issue, uh, my daughter Sydney was playing drums for us that night. She was on the drums,
That
and
is cool.
she's super talented. And Isaac, I don't know just yet.
He's all
he's still
boy,
this.
huh?
Yeah, he's all boy. He's just still hanging out. I don't. We shall
Yeah.
see. We shall see. But
Yeah.
he's awesome.
So is it like a requirement to be in your family? You have to learn to play or sing or something, or
Kind of. We the both kids can. Both Courtney and Sydney both can play like some stuff on piano. They both play guitar.
okay.
And of course, Sydney's been playing drums. So Isaac will probably start doing something. Probably during this quarantine. Me and Amanda were talking yesterday about starting him just learning some basic piano stuff, some basic theory and stuff like that, because he has an ear. He has an ear for it,
Right.
and he can harmonize and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of it's like one of our pastimes. We sit around and play and sing and. So that's just kind of like our family. That's what we do. So we
Yeah.
worship a lot.
That's so cool. That must really be something to, as a dad, one as their pastor, and then somebody like you who's so gifted in that aspect to see that coming about in your kids.
Oh yeah, definitely. Years ago, I preached a message about Noah and how Noah, was a really great preacher. In the Bible, the Bible says that Noah was a preacher of righteousness
Right.
and that he was an evangelist of his time. And he preached a great and he had the best message of any preacher. He preached, it's going to rain. I mean, that's this world's going to flood. I mean, guaranteed. God told me it's going to rain, and
Right.
the Bible said he preached it, and he had a great platform too. He preached. I mean, he had a boat. I mean, no one had seen a boat. No one had I mean, this guy was building it with his 2 hands and his sons, and I mean, his platform was amazing. And then he had signs and wonders. I mean, like he said, it's going to rain, and then all of a sudden, animals from all over the world just showed up in his front yard.
Right.
So he had proof. Okay, guys, something's going on. I mean, if my neighbor started having an elephant show up out of nowhere, I would okay,
Yeah,
some
you start
some
listening.
something's
Yeah.
going on. But the only people that got on the boat was his family, and that's because they were the only ones that helped him build it. And so, if you give your children a hammer and you let them build with you, they're probably going to get on the boat.
Yeah.
And I helped my dad. Me and my 2 brothers, we helped our dad. My oldest brother was a minister. He was a preacher. He's a phenomenal drummer, and we helped build the church. And we helped cut the grass, paint walls, help with remodels, and did ministry. And I led worship and worked. And I didn't always live the best life, and I had my time of being a prodigal son. Um, but we were always helping. We're always
Right.
involved in the ministry. And my baby brother is there with my dad, and he does everything, literally everything. He's like the youth pastor. He's the finance guy. He's the
Wow.
secretary. He's everything,
Yeah.
and he's the music director. He's the one with all the talent. If you can believe that, he is a phenomenal musician and singer.
Yeah.
And we all helped build Spring Lake
Right.
United Pentecostal Church, and now we're all in ministry. Every one of us, we're all on the boat.
Yeah. That's
Every one of us
awesome.
are on the boat because we help build it.
I
So
love that analogy.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, so that kind of expound on that, how you got into ministry. Did you do Bible school, or was it just something your family did? Obviously, your parents involved you in that. How did
Yeah.
your ministry, specifically as a worship, minister, kind of evolve?
Well, you know, when I was born, my dad was a preacher, and when I was born, my dad was helping my grandfather with which my mom's dad won my dad to the truth.
Okay.
And so, of course, that's a whole nother story. But so when I was born, my dad was helping my grandfather with the church there in Lumberton, North Carolina. And then my grandfather moved to Spring Lake, North Carolina. And my dad moved with him. My dad and mom moved with them and helped him assist there. And then when they built the church up to about 45, 50 people, my grandfather left and went and started another church, because that's what he did. He just would just go start churches. And my dad stayed and took the church there in Spring Lake. So as a kid, I was just always in church,
Mm-hmm.
and I always had a heart for it. I always, when I was 9 years old, I was, I mean, I could take you to the place, and the altar is still there, in the old building at our old church. And I remember praying. I was 9, and I remember praying, Lord, if you want me to do something for you, because I really didn't want to do what my dad did, to be honest with you. I was just like, if you want me to do something, let someone tell me. And
Yeah.
a minister in our church at that time literally came and knelt down beside me and put his arms around me, and he said, Cortt, the Lord told me to tell you that he's going to use you to reach millions of people. And that
Wow.
was the exact words that he spoke. And I said, wow, that's, I was 9 years old. And so being a kid, I said, Lord, could you do that again? I prayed that. And I was 9. And I said, Lord, could you do that again? And so nothing happened, and service was ending. And I thought, well, maybe it was just that guy, maybe it wasn't God, because God didn't do it again. So I was like, whatever. And the man who was preaching, his name was Richard Rose, a great preacher. He stopped. He said, "No." He said, "I want to stop." He said, "I hope this is too much." He said, "This young man right here, young brother Chavis," and he pointed me out. He said, "I just want to tell you that the Lord spoke to me tonight and told me that He was going to use you to reach millions of people." And at 9 years old, I mean, I knew right there and right then that my whole life would be used for the kingdom of God. I ran from that. I ran from that for years. It terrified me. I didn't want to do it. Um, Around 14 years old, I had been like leading worship in the youth. Now, when I say, listen, when I say I was leading worship in the youth, I was singing hymnals at youth service. Like it is
Right.
not like today, not like leading worship today.
Wasn't
So
NYC.
no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. We everybody in the church had a brown book, and I had a white book, and I would start service with "Praise the Lord, Church." Today we're singing page 1 and page 369. Jesus, hold my hand, and
Yeah.
we're singing. So I knew, and we would flip, and that's how I started leading worship.
Right.
Well, the guy who led worship at our church left. He took a job in, I believe it was Michigan, and my dad said, "Hey, could you help lead worship?" And I was, of course, you never said no to my dad, so I said absolutely. And so I started leading worship at 14. By 16 years old, I had pretty much taken over the whole music department and was the choir director and doing all that. And by by middle of 17, I was pretty much backslid. By 18, I was pretty much gone. Went to college at around 19. Well, between 18 and 19, and just really made a mess of my life. I totally quit church, got into drugs, got into a lot of craziness. Um, right before my 20th birthday, I turned 20 in March of 2000. I believe it was, I turned 20 in March of 2008. No, 2000. No, I'm sorry. I'm way off. I turned 20 in 1998. Let me take that
Okay.
back. March of 1999, I turned March of 1999, I turned 20. And right before that, right before the 2000, right before 1998 ended at college, I overdosed and almost died. Um, I had a pretty much out of body experience. The Lord spoke to me and told me that He wanted to use me, but because I ran from His call, that He was not going to let the world have me. And the Lord spared my life. I promised the Lord that I would do His work, and He spared my life. And so I came back to the Lord. I got back in church. Me and Amanda were dating at the time, and me and Amanda had broke up at the time. I started dating her again, and pretty much told her, if you'll have me back, I'll marry you, and you'll be it for me. And she was like, let's do it. So that's that story. And so I went back to my dad's church, went back to my dad's church and took back over the music program after a while. After several years of me being back in the church, me and Amanda got married. I was 21 when me and Amanda got married. And around the age of 22, God called me to evangelize. And for about 6-7 years, my dad told me no. And which was, he needed to. I was frustrated with it, but it was the right thing to do. But during that time, I was the music director at his church. And of course, I was also on the pastor team. I was like a co-pastor. And so, no one knew my name. No one knew who I was. I just led worship at Spring Lake, and that was it. And then at several different conferences um, that my dad was involved with, I led worship at those conferences. And when I led worship at those conferences, people started asking, hey, who's this guy? Could you come lead worship over here? Could you do this? Could you do that? That's really how that started. But I didn't do any of that. And in 2003, right around the time that I really felt like God was about to open the door for me to evangelize, several people had called me and wanted me to come and do music and different things like that. In 2003, I was activated with the National Guard because I joined the National Guard in 2000 or end of 99. Because right out of college, I had ruined my college. So I joined the National Guard to get college money because I had ruined all my college money. And so in 2003, I was activated into full-time service and spent 6 months retraining, and then spent the whole year of 2004 in Iraq in combat.
Wow.
With the U.S. Army. And so that changed my life. 2004 was a pivotal year for me. It was early on in the Iraq fight, and we were there. I was in combat, and everything that you can think of combat, that's what I was in. And it was pretty wild. It was life-changing. It was life, it was life altering for me. And when I came back from Iraq in the beginning of 2005, my dad started talking to me about, hey, people are wanting to hear your testimony. They're wanting to hear about what happened in Iraq. They had done a news article on me in Iraq. In my state did a news article on me because I started up a church in Iraq, and I started up a choir, and it was all men because I was in a combat unit, so it was all men. And so we started up a choir, an all men's choir, singing in the middle of the desert. And there was a journalist there from one of the major news places, and he came to church on Sunday, and he was just blown away. He was like, this is crazy. So he did a whole write-up on me. And so people were calling me about that, like, hey, come tell us about what you did in Iraq and different things like that. And so around the beginning of 2006, that's when I started evangelizing and really, started leading worship like at General Conference and different things like that. And I tell people all the time, everybody who you see, every Cortt Chavis, every Victor Jackson, every Matt Tuttle, every whatever you consider to be a big time preacher or whatever you think, I know those guys, and I know they don't see themselves that way. I don't see myself that way either. But whatever you would consider to be, oh, this guy's a big time preacher, or this guy's well known, or whatever. The backstory is always where it's where the holy moments in my life are.
Right.
Leading worship at Youth Congress is amazing, but that's not where I learned how to love God.
Right. Exactly.
Preaching Youth Congress was amazing. But that's not where I learned how to have a relationship with God. I learned how to have a relationship with God in the desert, a literal, actual desert. And and so, that's kind of my story of my ministry and my journey from, small town Spring Lake, North Carolina, to where the Lord has brought me at today.
Wow, so I had no idea you served in the military and all of that. So it wasn't something like, I just want to lead in AYC one day. It's something you kind of ran from, and God's ordered your steps into it.
Yeah, I had no idea. I've never even thought about that before. I never even been to a youth congress until Tim Gaddy. No, I'm sorry, not Tim Gaddy. Todd Gaddy, who was the youth president at the time, had come to North Carolina youth camp and met me and heard my story about Iraq. And he was like, man, I'm preaching Friday night at youth congress in a couple months, and I would love to have you there and tell your story on stage about what God did for you in Iraq and all this stuff. And that's the first youth congress that I had really ever been to.
Yeah.
And that was
Wow.
the first youth congress stage I'd really ever been on. I think me and some friends of mine sang at one. I was like 16 years old. I had this little group of like a cappella group, and we sang one night. It's so long ago, I don't really remember being there. I don't remember what we did. Like, it was so, it was just such a crazy time in my life. But that first, walking out on that stage with Todd Gaddy and I never would have thought that I would be there. That was not a part of my aspirations. That was not a part of my
Right.
dreams.
Yeah.
That was not in my book. But it was in God's book,
Right.
and you hear someone say something to you. God's going to use you to reach these people, and God's going to do this in your life, and you think, okay, God always shows you the end. He never shows you the in between.
The in between. Right.
No, he always shows you the end. He says, this is where you're going to be. He tells Joseph, he shows Joseph his brothers bowing down to him and his
Mhm.
mother and father giving him honor. But he didn't show him the pit or Potiphar's house or prison. He just showed him the end. And I
Right.
think, that's what God did for me when I was 9. And when I was 22, me and Amanda were fasting and praying about me being an evangelist. I'd felt it so strongly that I started to fast and pray about it. And in a service on a Sunday morning, Johnny Garrison, who is a prophet, was preaching. He was preaching in our church, and I felt I heard someone say "go," and it was so loud. It was like in my left ear. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was an audible voice that "go," and I turned around to see, and I was standing next to the wall. I was in the far left corner, and there was no one there. And I thought, man, that was weird because I heard it. Well,
Mhm.
brother Garrison was on the other side of the church. He had stopped preaching, and he was walking towards me, and the church was just like looking at him like, what is he doing? Because he just stopped, and he stood right in front of me in my father's church, and he said, I heard that. And I said, you heard what? He said, the Lord just told you to go. And when he said it, I heard it.
Wow.
And he laid hands on me, and I was 22 years old. I've never been the same from that moment. But that again, that's God showing you the end. And
Mhm.
when I was evangelizing, because I evangelized for close to 7 years, when I was evangelizing, I told the Lord, whenever you change this for me, like whenever I'm not an evangelist anymore, I want to feel what I felt in that place. And so around 2000, and I'd say maybe the beginning of 2011, maybe the end of 2010, I woke up one morning to go get on an airplane to go somewhere and preach some conference, and I didn't want to go. I could not get myself motivated to go. And I thought, what is this? Well, what is this I feel, And so that morning on the way to the airport, I prayed. I was driving to Raleigh, North Carolina to the airport there in Raleigh. And because I lived in North Carolina at the time, and I prayed, Lord, what do I feel? It was such a different feeling for me.
Mhm.
And I knew it was spiritual. I knew immediately it was spiritual. And I just felt the Lord, say, I'm shifting you. This is what you prayed for. You prayed for this. You prayed for this feeling. You prayed for this emotion. So I'm shifting you.
Wow.
And it was a very uncomfortable feeling. And I said, Lord, and the Lord was like, I want you to start a church. And I was like, no, absolutely not. That's not what I want to do. But what had happened was a few months before that happened, I was at a church in Bastrop, Louisiana. And there's a bishop there. There's a bishop there in Bastrop, Louisiana, Brother Fulton.
Mhm.
And Brother Fulton was handing me a check. I preached for them on a weekend. He was handing me a check. And when he put the check in my hand, he still had a hold on to it. And he was sitting at his desk, old school type deal. They just bring you in the room, set you down, and
Yeah.
write you out a check as you watch them write the check. Just a
Yeah.
great man of God, just a
Yeah.
great man of God. He put the check in my hand, and when I grabbed it, he said, Cortt Chavis, you are a great pastor. There is a pastor's spirit on you.
Wow.
And I said, thank you. But by the time I got to my truck, I could not shake it. I just couldn't shake it. And I had like been going and preaching at people's churches and falling in love with the people and, and all this stuff. I was like, what is happening to me? And then all of a sudden I didn't want to go. And I said, Lord, if this is you, then you got to talk to Amanda, because I'm not talking to Amanda. Like, I'm not having that conversation, because Amanda's a home girl. She's country.
Did you have to talk her into the evangelizing already?
No, not really. I believe that she felt it too. She felt that
Okay.
shift with me. We both felt it at the same time. We were fasting and praying together about it during that season. And so maybe 6 months later, me and Amanda were driving on the road, and she said to me, do you think that we will always live here? And I said, what do you mean? Like, do you think we'll always live? Because we kind of lived out in the country with her in the same area as her parents. And I said, I don't know, we might could look for a house and maybe, buy some land somewhere else or whatever. And she said, no. She said, do you think we'll always live in North Carolina? And I said, what are you talking about? And she started crying a little bit. She said, I feel like the Lord's been dealing with me to go start a church. And so I started crying, and she was like, oh no, it's real. Oh no, it's true.
He talked to both of us.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And, it was just such an amazing experience, that season for us, because for 6 years, my dad had told me, no, no, you're not going to evangelize. No. And so I was terrified to go ask him if I could go pastor a church, or if I could go start a church, because, I don't do anything without my pastor's approval. Nothing. I don't do anything without a blessing. And so, I had lived out in the world for a couple of years, and I had messed my life up, and I knew what it was to be from underneath the covering of my pastor. And I had just made myself a promise. I'll never do that again. I'll never be from out the blessing of my pastor. And so when I went and talked to my dad, he immediately said, yes. The first conversation, he said, yes, this is great. It's going to be awesome. And I thought, wow, who are you? And what have you done with my father? But it was just an amazing experience. And we moved here to Atlanta. Where there was a couple other cities that we looked at, one in South Carolina and one in Texas. Almost was in Texas.
Man.
Yeah. But different situations and scenarios. We wound up in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And my dad said something to me during this time I thought was just so powerful, because, growing up, going to conferences and being around preachers, you always hear guys talking about, the Lord woke me up with this city on my mind and I was driving through this city and the Lord said, this is it. And, stuff like that. And so that's what I was looking for. And I asked my dad, I said, where do you think I should go? And my dad, my dad's just an old school, man of God. And he's very practical. And he said, it doesn't matter. And I thought, what? I said, what do you mean? He said, it doesn't matter. And I said, well, I thought God, I thought the Lord's give you a city. He said, it doesn't matter. He said, there are people dying and going to hell in every neighborhood and every city in America. So it doesn't matter what place you pick, just go. And he said, if you will go, the Lord will go before you. And
wow, that's powerful.
So when we got here, the Lord had already been here.
Yeah.
So
so the next question was, you're a pastor. How did that come about, picking that city and you guys landing there?
Really, it was it was a district thing, because we went to the district and met the district board to start a church, and we didn't even have a city. We was like, hey, we want to we want to be in the Atlanta area, but there's so many cities in the Atlanta area. And I just had this, in my mind, my father saying, it doesn't matter, just pick a spot and go, because people are going to hell everywhere. And I thought, that so really it was a deal where the district gave us a list of cities, and we drove through those cities, and Loganville just really stuck out to us. It was, a family type city, a very a bedroom community, so to speak. A lot of people live here.
Right.
And so that's how we wound up in Loganville. There was really we didn't know anybody here. We didn't have like friends in Loganville or family in Loganville. We didn't know anybody in Loganville. I never even heard of Loganville ever in my life.
Right.
And we moved. We bought a house and literally moved. The weekend we started the church, I moved into my house, and I was just committed. I was committed to it. and we just started having service. And I think our very first service, we had like 120, which was like my family, my wife's family, my friends, a bunch of preachers that, had come to help us, a bunch of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Our second service was 20 people.
That was the real number.
That was the real
That
number.
was
That's
the
the
real
real first service.
Right.
20 people. We had 20 people. And the last service that we had before the coronavirus was, I think it was 430 something.
That's incredible. And this has been in like 7 years.
7 years. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
7 years.
Wow. That's beautiful.
And so it's just been, if you'll go and you'll be committed, God will go before you. And
kind of takes the pressure off of having to hear like and you hear that, I had this specific town or this specific country or this specific thing on my mind, in my heart, and it just go. That's awesome. I love that.
Absolutely. And I believe that happens. I believe people have that. I believe that people, would be sitting at home and God just put a city in their mind, or a town, or like you said, a country in their heart. And they're like, you know what, I'm going to Brazil. I'm going to Spain. I'm going, and they just know it. They know. And I believe that. It just didn't happen that way for me, and if there's anybody watching who feels that, God's calling you to do something, you don't always have to have clear direction. Sometimes imperfect action is better than no action at all.
Absolutely.
And I would just say, make sure that you get a blessing from the man of God in your life, and go. And God will do the unimaginable.
Wow, that's I love that. That's awesome. So so you're a pastor and obviously one of the most well-known worship leaders. How does that work in your church? I mean, do you sing? Do you get up? Do you have a say on what happens on Sunday? Okay, so I didn't know if it was your wife or another worship minister. Like, how does the dynamic work for that?
So of course, we're a church plant. So I spent several months playing the drums and leading worship from the drums, and then running up and doing offering and all that kind of stuff. And so I did that for several months, and then God blessed us, with some people to come help us. And then I spent another couple years being the worship leader. Like I would teach Bible study. Mm-hmm. I would lead all the worship and preach the message.
Right.
And then basically do all the preliminaries, all the offerings and prayers and whatever.
Yeah.
And then so the Lord kept blessing us, and so I got other people leading worship, and I got other people helping with preliminaries and opening services and things like that. So now we have an amazing team. 7.5 years in, we have an amazing team that runs that whole show. I don't even I'm hardly even involved in it anymore. Okay. But they won't let me go. They will not let me go. They need to let me go.
I mean, I wouldn't either. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the thing is that my wife is like, every week she's like, hey, could you lead this song? Hey, could you lead?
Right.
And, and I get it. I get it. And it's what I love to do. And so I don't mind it as much, but there's some Sundays I would just love to walk in. And literally the first time I touch the mic, I'm like, turn in your Bibles. That would be awesome. And I have had services like that, in the past, in the last, at least the last couple of years, because our team has developed so greatly. But I don't, it's a part of my ministry. And so it's part of what I do. And, saying this to some people, I have, there is a stigma in our movement that you either have to be a singer or a preacher, and you can't be both. Years ago, I had the pleasure of spending some really quality time with Merle Ewing before he passed, a great man of God. And some of the words that he spoke into my life just forever settled me on who I was and what God was doing in my life. I was sitting in his office one evening with Aaron Bounds, and we were sitting in the office, and he shared some stuff with Brother Bounds, Aaron, a good friend of mine. And then he looked at me and he said, Cortt, he said, I know people have told you that you either have to be a preacher or a singer. And he said, but I have lived my whole life as both. And he
Right.
said, you can do both. You don't believe the lie that you have to be one or the other. And he said, you are a minister. And so whatever ministry looks like, that's what you be, that's what you do. And it changed me because I was, struggling with that because it was early on in my evangelistic ministry, and people would call me, hey, come preach. And then another person would call me, hey, come lead worship. and
Right.
and and I would almost have this feeling of like, do they not think I'm a preacher, or do they not think I can lead worship? And it's
Right.
always this battle. But after Brother Ewing spoke that into my life, I've never had that battle since. And I tell people, listen, I am a minister of the gospel, and sometimes that looks like singing a song, and
Right.
sometimes that looks like preaching a message.
Yep.
But it doesn't matter because ministry is ministry. There's no, whatever avenue to get the gospel to someone, that's what it
Right.
is. So it's just a part of who I am. And so on the church side of things, on my personal church side of things, I think it's something that I'm probably always going to be involved in.
Yeah.
Always going to be involved in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you like give them a hint? Hey, this is what I'm preaching Sunday. Lean towards this direction.
Every once in a while, we'll talk about that. It's not something, I'm not really like a plan my month of preaching out type guy.
Right.
I'm like, I'm going to pray this week and get in my word, and God's going to give me a word. And sometimes God gives me a word about Thursday or Wednesday. And sometimes God gives me a word Sunday morning at 5 a.m. when I'm sitting here in my office,
Right.
you know. So that's kind of how I operate. Every once in a while, and I say every once in a while, but a lot of times I will have something um, already in, like in the barrel. And so I'll
Right.
say, hey, like today I'm preaching about, this, I'm preaching about the blood or whatever it may be. And so we'll kind of connect those songs, especially in our major events like Easter and Christmas and things like that. I
Right.
definitely, because and like our Vision Sundays and our major events like that, because the Lord's been speaking to me probably for months about what I'm going to say in that meeting. And so
Right.
I'll say, hey, this is kind of the direction I'm going in. This is my thought. This is our theme. And so we'll go that way. And I see that my mama is watching. I love you, mama.
She's an awesome lady. I
She
had the
is the
privilege of
bomb,
hearing her
and
a
she's
couple.
she's like my biggest fan. But that's good because I'm her biggest fan too. So
Yeah. So, okay, all of this COVID stuff, I mean, it's obviously affected the way that we do church right now.
yeah.
Um, and at least in this area, we're, totally stay at home kind of thing going on. So, how has that affected you guys? Your online services? It's great because you kind of have a worship team in your house, your wife and kids. But
Yes.
how does that work for you guys? Have you all figured that out yet?
You know what? We are, week by week, day by day. We've always live streamed here.
Okay.
And so we have a good team, a good live stream team. So we've just live streamed our services. Um, we live stream, pretty effectively. So like
Mhm.
that part of it for us, thank God, because I know a lot of churches are just like trying to come into that
Trying to
world,
figure this out.
and we've
Right.
been we've been in that world for many years. And so like
Yeah.
we have a good setup, we have a great team. And my creative team here at Truth Chapel has worked diligently, and they are amazing, everything from social media, all the way to live streaming services. So we have a good team in place. We have a great creative team. And so we've done really good with Facebook, Instagram, just keeping everybody connected, keeping everybody plugged in. It's difficult to do that. But now I think more people are connecting because they realize this is the only way we can connect. So in the
Hmm.
first couple of weeks, we kind of had like a false front where it seemed like a lot of people weren't getting on, but I think they thought,
Right.
we'll be back at church next week. We'll be back at
Right.
church.
In
Now
a
that they
couple weeks.
see, yeah, now that they see clearly that it's probably not going to be a couple weeks. It's probably going to be, a couple months maybe.
Right.
Everybody's kind of connecting, gathering around. So we're doing our best to do that. We're doing Zoom meetings with our youth. Our youth had a Zoom meeting tonight. So my daughters were in their Zoom meetings tonight. We're starting Zoom small groups this week. Our ladies ministry have already, working on that, getting that kicked off. And we haven't done small groups with our men yet, but we're probably going to start that as well. Um,
Yeah.
We're doing, I got all my ministers together. They're sending me words of encouragement every day, and I'm posting those words of encouragement from our ministry teams. Um, we have our youth are doing, motivation Mondays, and they're doing, so we have a ton of, we have a ton of ways to, and creative ways to just keep people connected.
Hmm.
But at the same time, this is going to get old. you
Right.
know it's going to get old, and for me it's getting old already in a lot of different ways, but this is the new normal, and
Right.
we just, we're excited for when it gets back to normal. It's going to be, I believe that in this time a lot of people are seeing they took a ton of stuff for granted, that you know
Absolutely.
that
Do
they
you
just,
find that this has been more work, like trying to be creative and find avenues and ways and get online at certain times and figure out all of this stuff? I mean, which you guys had a lot of that figured
yeah,
out, but has it been more work
it's
for your team?
absolutely, it is definitely it is definitely a lot more work, and i
Yeah,
think it's i think it's just mental work.
absolutely.
um we have leaned on the actual building for so long,
Right.
and when I say for so long, I'm talking like 2,000 years.
Right.
We've leaned on the building, the actual edifice, for so long. We don't really connect that much during the week. You know why? Because on Sunday, I'm gonna see you.
The
we
building.
don't really we don't really have a joining together, during our weeks, because on Wednesday I'm going to see you, or on small group I'm going to see you, so we're good.
Right.
We're not going to see each other, so like, how do we, do that? So I think it's kind of opened our eyes a little bit to how disconnected we really are.
Right.
We thought we were so connected, and then here comes COVID-19. It's like, oh wow, we're not really connected.
Yeah.
If you
Right.
don't come if you do not come to the building, I'm not connected to you.
Right.
If I don't see you in the building, we're not connected. And so that's been the eye-opening thought process. Like, okay, wow, we're really not that connected. We thought we were, but
Right.
the only thing that connected us was 2230 Commerce Drive. That was it.
Right.
And outside of that, we weren't touching you throughout the week with a word of encouragement. We weren't touching you throughout the week with a scripture. We weren't touching you throughout the week with a devotional. We weren't touching you throughout the week with, and so like, it's kind of opened my eyes as a pastor. Like, we're working hard now to put this stuff in place,
Hmm.
but you know what? When this is over, I don't think I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing.
Right.
As far as like every day calling, like we do a call multiplier, which is amazing. Callmultiplier.com. If you don't have a way to connect with your entire church in one phone call or one
Right.
text message, go to callmultiplier.com. It's a great website, and it works. It works every time. And we've used it for years now, and it's a blessing.
Yeah.
So just for some people who may be wondering how I can get a hold of everybody with one phone call,
Right.
callmultiplier.com. And so we have a call multiplier, and for the last week now, I've been calling every day at the same time, and just, telling people what our focus prayer of the day is going to be. So like Monday was our essential workers. Just as we're praying for all of our essential workers, we're praying, and the next day was praying for those that are looking for cure or vaccine for this virus, praying that God will give them supernatural wisdom, give them supernatural insight, give them supernatural knowledge. And then today's prayer, our focus prayer today, was praying for our president, praying for our governors and our mayors and our congressmen. Like, they've never led through anything like this, and whether you agree with what they're
Right.
doing or not doesn't matter. Like, this is crazy for everybody.
Right. Right.
I'm trying to stay connected to, basically around 500 people. These people are trying to stay connected to thousands and millions. I can't imagine. And so every day, calling every day, connecting every day, letting the church hear my voice, letting the church see my face, you know, it's drawn us closer together. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I wasn't doing this.
Hmm.
I mean, if they didn't come to church on Sunday and see me, they didn't hear from me through the week. And I never even thought about it. I thought, like, if they need me, they'll call me,
Right.
you know? So,
So would it?
it does put it in perspective,
Sure.
how disconnected we truly were before this thing happened.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Um, just real quickly, do you have any suggestions? So you mentioned that we have a system. I'm not sure what it is, the back end of it, but where pastor calls and we can text message and stuff like that. But Any other, in case somebody's listening and they're like, hey, where do I find some resources? Because this is new for so many people, trying to figure all of this out. Maybe
Yeah.
smaller churches and such. Do you have any other, really quickly, any other suggestions for people?
You know, there's some really great ways to go live. You know, you can purchase a and I'm just going to say some words here that, you know, people probably, you know, if you don't know how to do it, then it'll probably at least point you in the right direction.
Right.
You need a video capture device. So people are like, how do I stream? How do I stream from my camera? You know, instead of my phone, I don't want to stream from my phone. I want to stream from an actual camera. You need a video capture device. So you could just type that in, video capture device, Blackmagic, Elgato. There's a lot of them out there. I think Roland makes some, and then there's a ton more. You know, video capture device. That's what you need.
Okay.
And the second thing you need is OBS. You know, and OBS is a free download right to your computer. It's just OBS, and you can YouTube most of this stuff, like, you know, this open broadcast software. Exactly, open broadcast software. You just go on Google and type in OBS. It's a free download. It'll download right to your computer. Very easy to use, very easy to manipulate. the learning curve the learning curve, I would say, for someone who knows anything about this kind of stuff, the learning curve is a couple of days. Literally, you could be
Good
proficient in
timing.
it. You could be proficient in it with spending a couple of days, maybe 6-7 hours for 2 days on this equipment, and you could literally be proficient in it. If you don't know anything about it, I would say the learning curve is about a week. Just watching videos, watching YouTube, and so you need a video capture device and OBS, and that's it. If you got Facebook or YouTube,
Yeah.
that's it. That's all you need. You don't need anything else. Your video to capture device. If you wanted to get fancy, you could maybe check around your church and look at your board, look at the board that you use at your church, and see if it has a USB. If it has a USB connection, which most of the newer ones do, plug. It's probably going to be like a printer cable, like an old printer, like the old printer type cables. Probably the kind of cable it's going to be. It may be HDMI. It may be, but most of them are just like a printer cable. Plug that bad boy into your soundboard. Plug it into your computer, and then when it says what audio device would you like to use, it's probably going to say something like a codec link, or something along that lines. Codec is probably going to be one of the most common ones. CODEC, codec. Click on that, and then whatever's coming through your board will come through your sound system. You know, if you want to get fancy and you want people to be able to hear that kind of thing, that's the easiest way to go live immediately. Or, you know, it may take you a few days to get a video capture device. But Facebook is free streaming. Um, um, YouTube real quick. And if it's difficult for you to kind of figure out that, you could maybe purchase a like something like Switcher TV, or you could purchase something like we do Restream. It's called Restream.io, and what Restream does is it allows us to stream on YouTube and Facebook simultaneously, and it's relatively cheap. It's not super expensive. So those are some really quick ways that you could, in a few days, working 3 or 4 hours a day, you could be proficient in this stuff just by watching YouTube and getting the right equipment. A lot of people don't have the right equipment. They think they can just plug their camera into their computer and just go live. That is not that's not how it works. It doesn't
Right.
work like that. So
Yeah.
the video capture device will help you.
Okay. That's good information. I know that there's a lot of people scrambling, trying to figure stuff out. And so let me quickly go through a few more of these questions. I was going to ask you, what do you feel like you might have taken for granted 2 weeks ago that you would appreciate more now today, or, kind of wrapping this COVID thing up?
You know, I think one of the biggest things that I took for granted, and being a pastor, it's very paramount, but I still feel like as a whole, as a church body, I believe that we, and myself included, just underestimated the value of being together. It just being together is so powerful. It's so
Such an
powerful.
interaction.
Yeah, it's like, the Bible says in the book of Psalms, it says, the Lord inhabits the praises of Israel. Now, that word praise there is not yada, which is mostly, if you read the book of Psalms and you see the word praise a lot, it's mostly yada, which is the lifting of the hands, the clapping, the boisterous worship that we're used to. But in this scripture, when he says the Lord inhabits the praises of Israel, he is using the word tehillah. And the tehillah praise is literally the congregation singing songs of Zion.
Wow.
So God says, I inhabit the praises of my people, which he's not saying like you can praise all by yourself and then I can praise all by myself. What he's saying is when my people come together and they sing together, that I will dwell.
Wow.
Oh, sorry. That's why that's why he said where two or three are gathered in my name. He never said one.
Right.
So there is a biblical connection with us being together. Now that's why we're asking people, hey, listen, when we go live at church, when we do your revival and we have worship, like get your family around, sing together, worship together. Let your children hear you sing with your
Yes.
children, sing with your spouses. Why? Because we need to worship the Lord together, together. The only mistake that they made when they put Paul and Silas in prison is they didn't give them separate cells.
Right.
They put them together. They should have separated them. But because they were together, it was two of them, and they sang praises at midnight. And all it took was two.
That's
All it
good.
took was two. And when the presence came in, the foundations were not strong enough to take it. They collapsed under the weight of the presence of God because two were gathered in his name. And so I think that we have just, I don't know. I just think that we just overstepped it. I posted something on my Facebook page a couple weeks ago, and I said, I pray that we don't miss the lessons that God is teaching us. And
For sure.
one of my prayers was, I pray that we miss church so bad that when we get a chance to meet again, like we won't just miss for any old kind of reason, you know,
Absolutely.
missing
Exactly.
because, my kids got a game, or, I got to go shopping, or, oh, it's a beautiful Sunday, so we decided to go to the beach. It's a pretty day, so we decided to go. No, I'm going to church. I'm going to be in the house of the Lord, because there's no place like that, being around the people of God and being in God's presence that way.
Absolutely. I'm a huge hugger. I am. I love touch, and I love people. I'm a major people person, and it literally it literally hurts my feelings to see people from a distance and not be able to reach out and touch them and hug
Yes.
them. It
Yes.
makes me want to cry, because that's how I communicate that I love you.
Right.
And so for sure.
I'm the
Uh,
same exact way. Our church is that way. Our church is a hugging church. Our church is every Sunday you're going to get 10, 20, 30 hugs, and a couple of
right.
our older ladies, they going to kiss you, and you just gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah.
They going
Yeah.
to kiss you, and then you can't get away from it. Just let it happen.
We're gonna have like a 10-minute meet and greet when we all come back together. We
Exactly.
brother Tuttle always jokes. He's like, "Man, we got to shut this meet and greet down. Like we have a timer on the back wall, 2 minutes." And he's looking at me because our church will fellowship for 30 minutes in the middle of
Our
church.
church is the
They let this
same
one
way.
go.
Same way.
Yeah, for sure. So, how has the climate and the atmosphere changed, like in your city and stuff? Or do you think that this has affected the way like people are? They freaked out? Are they reaching out? Are they
You know,
hungry?
I don't think for a lot of people it's hit home yet. I'll be honest with you. I mean, even today, I was out today, and people are everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
Walmart is packed. Um, I went out last Saturday. I was going to run to Home Depot. I just turned around and came home. I'm not going in there with all the people. I know they got something in there. you know, I just said no. The devil is a lie. I'm going home. And I think it's still kind of like people are in like shock right now, like, oh wow, I'm going to be locked down for a month. But I am seeing the cracks in the service where people are beginning to reach out and to ask questions. And yesterday, a friend of mine who I have not seen since probably around 2002. I have not laid eyes on this kid since 2002. He was one of my soldiers in the military. I was a squad leader back in the military, probably 2002. And yesterday, he sent me a message on Facebook and was like, "Hey man, I see you're a preacher. I've been struggling with my faith. I went through a nasty divorce. I've been keeping up with you." And I didn't even know this guy remembered me.
Right.
But, here he is, asking me all these questions. And he's like, so I, sending back a message like, "Man, I'd love to connect with you, pray with you. I hate all this stuff happening in your life." But I see that happening in our society, in our world right now. People are they're reaching for something. And, this guy's struggling with his faith. And he's scared right now because he has nothing. He has no hope. He doesn't know if God's real or God's not. And that's a scary place to be. There are a handful of people in this world that they are proud to be atheist. But I promise you, most atheists right now are struggling because there's no hope. They are fearful. And so I just pray that the church continues to be the church.
Right. What would you say to the person who wants to be used of God right now, and there's a desire, and I think that people, like, if you're connected to the church, you're wakening up and you're like, okay, God, use me. What would be a tip that you would say for someone wanting to be used of God right now?
I would just say, open your eyes to what is at hand. What, like where could you minister right now? Like, a lot of us wait. A lot of us wait for opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, opportunity is all around us. An old friend from high school, an acquaintance from, you know, an old workplace that you used to work at, or whatever. Um, and people are reaching out, and a lot of us miss it. People like yesterday, I could have just been like, "Oh man, this guy just wants to talk to me." Hey, what's up, dude? But
Mm-hmm.
I knew immediately this guy is searching. And so I see that opportunity. I'm jumping on it. I'm like, "Hey, bro, like, let's talk. I want to pray with you. I want to connect with you." And so
Right.
I would say to every believer watching right now, just stop. You know, the danger of the call is that you will keep looking to the palace,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll miss what's in the pit, and you'll miss what's in Potiphar's house, and you'll miss what's in the prison. You'll miss those opportunities to minister. Like, stop looking out there and just look right here. Like, what is here? What can my hands find to do right now? And I promise you that if you will shift your attention, God will start illuminating some things for you and say, this person, that person, this phone call.
Yes.
Every one of us knows someone in our church that's like on the outskirts, like on that outer ring of people. That's like, I see them like once a month, and I remember his name is Bill, and he's got some cute kids, and but I wonder if anybody's talked to them.
Mm-hmm.
you know a phone call. Hey, I don't even know if you know me. And here's the deal. I'm a pastor, so I can speak to this. I promise you, if you're watching right now and there's someone in your church that you want to personally connect with, your pastor probably has their number somewhere. Just reach out and say, "Hey, this guy that sits on the back row that wears that funny shirt every Sunday? Do you have a number for him?" "Yeah, I do. I actually do have a number for him. Here's his number." Because he expects to hear from me. He expects that.
Sure.
What he doesn't expect is for Sister Sally, who talked to him twice, to call him out of nowhere and say, "Hey, I'm praying for you. I love you. If there's anything you need, let me know. I would love to pray with you about it." That's life changing for people right now. Right now, those connections are literally changing people's lives. Just knowing someone is thinking about me. That's what you can do right now. You don't have to have a license. You don't even have to have a ministry. You can just do that right now.
That's so good. That's so good. Yes, I believe that. It's an opportunity like never before for the church.
Yes. Amen.
Opportunity like never before. So, I feel like you and I could chit chat for probably a couple more hours. I really have enjoyed
Absolutely.
this. But if anybody has any questions, there's an ask a question button right there. We're going to leave this up for just a few more seconds. If anyone does, you can comment there. It comments go so fast that it's hard to scroll through. So there's that ask a question button. If there's something very specific you want to ask Brother Chavis, and we'll get that answer before we get off here tonight. So while we're waiting to see if anybody has any questions for you, is there a funny story, a serious story, something that like nobody really knows about you? So when we get offline, we're going to be like, we really know who Cortt Chavis was or is.
You know, I've always been a comedian in my whole life. I I literally would spend, and if my mom's still watching, she can amen me. I would spend hours of my childhood trying to get my parents to laugh. Hours, not like try like here and there. I would spend hours of my life,
Like intentionally trying.
yes, intentionally trying to get. I would dress up. I would do silly songs. I would look. My mom commented. She said, "Oh Lordy, they should have let me talk." No,
She
mom,
could tell some
no,
stories, huh?
no. There's no stories that
We'll
you need to
bring her
tell.
on next time.
No, let's don't do it. She'll be telling some embarrassing stuff. Um, but you know, I've always been a comedian, and I've always just tried so hard to make people laugh. My church knows this about me because every Sunday I say something dumb, and they all they all they all have my little they all have my little colloquialisms down packed. Most of us say. But as a kid, I was very, always trying to be funny, but I was very accident prone too. Several times, several times being, being just me being a boy and being trying to always be funny. I injured myself so much that I literally lived in the hospital for a while with busted lips. I have stitches all over my face. You really can't tell. And my mom could probably amen me right now. It's amazing that my face is just not ruined because I
Wow.
busted my lips, I cut my eyes open, I busted my cheeks. I had I have scars, but I think this my complexion covers up a lot of my scars. People don't really can't tell.
Yeah.
But I went to the hospital so much. This is a true story. I went to the hospital so much that probably around the age of 10 or 11 years old, I went to the hospital and I had a cut over my eye. It's still a scar in my eyebrow right here, where me and my cousin were playing with cars and he threw a car and it hit me in the eye and it's busting my head open. Um, so I went to the hospital again. The doctors literally brought me into a room, made my parents leave, and the doctors questioned me. They interrogated me and they were like, is your mom and dad beating
Oh,
you? Are they, is your dad, hitting you? This is a true story. They're about to call the defects on my mom and dad.
oh my word.
And I remember being in the room. I was like, no. I was like, why are you asking me these questions? Like, no, my mom and dad are awesome. Like, they would never do that. My dad would never do that. And so that's a little story about me that you may not have known, that when I was a child, I was in the hospital a lot. Me and my older brother gave my mom and dad, heart attacks. Now my older brother, he didn't get hurt a whole lot, but when he got hurt, he did
It
it
was
right.
bad.
Like
Yeah.
in the hospital for weeks on end.
Wow.
Yes.
So you
Yes.
kept them
And
prayed through. Actually, they have a strong prayer life because of you.
absolutely. My mom and
Yeah.
dad, yeah, they definitely have a strong prayer life because of me. That's for sure. But they've always been my fans, and they've always, been amazing parents, and they've always
That's awesome.
been great examples for me and my brothers and my family.
That's
Um,
awesome. What a
they're awesome.
heritage. Man, I've
Yes.
really enjoyed getting to know you better. And I feel like the next time I see you leading worship, I'll kind of like, I'll be like, hey, I know that guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It was
So
good to.
I don't see any questions on here. If you have, yep, I don't see anything. So I think we
I don't
must
see
have
anything
covered
on
it
my side.
all. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
Well, man, I
Thank you.
appreciate you jumping on with us tonight for your revival, and we pray that God keeps you guys, and we look forward to hearing great things, the harvest and the revival God's going to give you guys.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to be on here. Thank you, Brother Tuttle,
Yeah.
for allowing me to be on here. And thank you guys for look, if if tonight would have crashed again, 3 times would have been strikeout. I'd have been out of here. But I'm
You would have
so
never want to talk
glad.
to us again.
I'm so glad it worked tonight,
I
and
know.
just so
I
good.
had a little team travailing and praying over this. I was like, y'all, that cannot happen again. Cannot.
Well, it has
So,
been great, and I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful to be a part. Love you guys and appreciate you.
all
And
right. Have a great night. Thank you
yes, do
so
the same.
much.
God bless you.
Tell our Eastgate people we love y'all. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. And we have church on Sunday, so be looking for all of that. And we love y'all. Don't forget to click on the give and continue to give to your revival and support what Eastgate is doing. We love y'all. Pray you have a great night. Have a great day tomorrow. We'll see you on Sunday. God bless.